Sonic.EXE Disaster was born in 2020 as a project that, without making much noise at first, managed to build a loyal fanbase. It wasn't just another game. Right from its earliest versions, it felt different and deeply uncomfortable, like something was watching the player. As time went on, that feeling only got worse, and with it came the debates, the theories, and the mysteries that still surround the game to this day. One of the most persistent rumors involved the existence of supposedly scrapped characters, Silver, Blaze, and even the disturbing idea of placing the normal Sonic inside a world corrupted by Sonic.EXE. Characters that, according to the community, weren't just concepts, but actually existed at some point during development. The question was never whether they existed, but what happened to them? The theory really exploded around Silver. Concept arts, suggestions, leaked ideas, and scattered comments made the possibility of seeing him in the game feel more and more real. The community began to push harder and harder, demanding his inclusion without stopping to consider what Silver would look trapped inside the Sonic.EXE universe, a world where nothing comes out untouched, and where even the most pure characters end up twisted. And this is where Outlike comes in. To many, the silent villain of this story. As is well known, Outlike never liked the idea of constantly adding new characters. For him, the roster was already complete with Shadow and Roach, characters that ironically aren't canon within the official Sonic.EXE lore, nor within Sonic.EXE Disaster itself. Their presence always felt strange, almost like intruders he didn't really want, but tolerated, just barely. Then the big question comes out. What about Metal Sonic? Many people point to him as an example, but the reality is more unsettling than it seems. Just look at the game's official information. Metal Sonic in this story was rebuilt by Dr. Robotnik. His redesign and drastically different behavior weren't a whim, but necessary for the narrative. Even so, this reinforces a disturbing idea. Metal Sonic is not canon in Sonic.EXE, but he's canon in Sonic.EXE Disaster, as if there were timelines that were never meant to intersect, yet somehow do. Well, going back to Silver, Outlike never truly believed in him. There was a moment, brief, almost invisible, where it seemed like the character would have a place in the game. But that interest slowly faded, as if something had gone wrong during the process. The constant pressure from the community ended up having the opposite effect. Instead of moving forward, Silver was pushed straight into oblivion. And the most unsettling part is that Silver did exist during development. He was shown on isolated occasions, mentioned indirectly, and even revealed and leaked by Outlike himself. He was never a myth or just an illusion. He was really there. Many believe the character got stuck during the Sonic.EXE remake stages, but that's not true. Silver resurfaced during the Sonic.EXE experimental era, roughly between 2023 and 2024. A silent, almost ghost-like return, as if the character refused to disappear completely. Even so, his definitive disappearance left behind an uneasy feeling. Some say Outlike simply ignored the request and decided to take his time. Others believed Silver represented something the game wasn't ready to show. At the end of the day, Outlike can do whatever he wants with his work. No one can force him to add something he doesn't want to. Though, many believe that including Metal Sonic was the bare minimum he did to calm the community. But Silver is still there. Suspended, completely abandoned, like a file that was never fully deleted. And in a game like Sonic.EXE Disaster, nothing that stays in the code is ever harmless. From that point on, Silver's trace became increasingly blurry, almost as if someone was actively trying to erase him. There were no official announcements, no cancellation statements, not even a quiet goodbye, just emptiness. Absolute silence. The only thing known for certain is that Silver was indeed planned, not as a side character or a simple add-on, but as a key place in the game's balance. And that's where the question that still haunts the community today was born. Not what Silver would have been like, but why he never came out, and whether his fate is to remain trapped forever in a version of the game that will never see the light of day. According to the information that managed to leak out before everything went cold, Silver was designed as a defensive character, but not a typical one. He wasn't fast like Sonic, and he wasn't violent like Shadow. His role was to endure, to hold on, to stay alive when the game had already decided you shouldn't be. He shared mechanics with other defensive characters, but with one unsettling detail. It was said he would have nerves of steel, an ability that allowed him to withstand extreme situations without losing control. Something deeply ironic in the Sonic.EXE universe, where every character, sooner or later, ends up mentally breaking. Silver wasn't made to win. He was made not to break. There was also talk that Silver would possess a constant energy aura, a strange field that not only protected him, but allowed him to move for brief moments in an unnatural way, almost as if he were slipping outside of reality itself. Some interpreted it as an advanced defensive ability. Others, more paranoid, believed that aura wasn't meant to protect him, but to let him escape, as if Silver were running from something that followed him even beyond the screen, something that was never meant to catch him. Over time, the only mentions Outlight has made about Silver have been vague, almost uncomfortable. He said he'd like to revisit the concept someday, not as a promise, but as an idea left hanging in the air. He mentioned that the game needs more helpers, more defenders, characters who don't confront the horror head-on, but try to contain it, delay it, resist it. For many, this sounded like the perfect excuse to bring Silver back. For others, it was a clear sign that Silver represents something the game still isn't ready to show. And this is where the story becomes even more unsettling, because Silver isn't the only lost character. There's another character known to the game who has barely been spoken about at all. A character who had concepts, sketches, preliminary ideas, but never received real attention. Even by the chaotic standards of Sonic.EXE's development, her implementation seemed too complicated, almost impossible. And the most disturbing part is that Outlight has never talked about her. He hasn't confirmed her either, and there are no clear leaks to speak of. It's as if that character never existed at all, or as if talking about her is something that simply shouldn't be done. And of course, we're talking about Blaze. The only thing known is that she appeared briefly in Sonic Dream Universe, both in its older version and its revised one. They were quick, silent appearances, almost decorative. She had no context or story and no explanation, and since then, absolutely nothing has been heard about her. Not in current versions, not in developer comments, not even in any ongoing project. And after talking about these two characters, a few questions start to surface. What if Silver was never scrapped due to lack of time, but because he fulfilled a role that was too dangerous for the lore? What if Silver wasn't just a defender for the player, but a character aware that the world itself was broken? A character capable of resisting the EXE corruption, surviving where others fail. Maybe Silver wasn't removed from the game. Maybe he was locked away, hidden inside experimental builds or alternate universes like Sonic Dream Universe. And maybe Blaze wasn't a mistake, but a residue. But after so long of the characters being kept out of the story, everything took an unexpected turn with Sonic.EXE Disaster, specifically during the Halloween 2024 update. Both of them joined the Survivor roster, expanding the original lineup of characters like Tails, Knuckles, and Amy. By that point, the game had become something else entirely. The community was larger, the lore heavier, and the pressure different. The decision changed. This wasn't a comeback planned from the start, nor a promise fulfilled late. It was a reaction. The game no longer needed more attackers. It needed containment. It needed characters who weren't meant to win, but to endure what had already spiraled out of control. And that's where Silver made sense again. Not as a nostalgic addition, but as a necessary piece for a system that was already collapsing. His concept stopped being dangerous and became inevitable, and with that move, something else was stirred. Blaze didn't return as a playable character or a central figure, but as a consequence, an echo, a leftover from experimental versions that were never meant to be touched. She wasn't introduced, she wasn't explained, and she certainly wasn't celebrated. She simply appeared, forcing the community to accept that some ideas don't disappear. They just wait for the moment when the game can no longer ignore them. For now, all that's left is to wait. To wait for one of these characters to emerge from the code once again. And yes, this video was short, but the most unsettling stories aren't the ones that explain everything. They're the ones that leave gaps. And if you want a second part, leave it in the comments. Your theories and your support are the only things keeping these stories alive.